Welcome to the Seahawkers podcast with your hosts, Adam Emmert.
This isn't a Hallmark movie. Sally Fields doesn't star in this film. This is Left Tackle.
And Brandan Schultz.
I believe, based on everything that I've seen from Bleacher Report in the past, that this is Jason Cole's fault.
Go Hawks!
Welcome to episode 157 of the Seahawkers podcast. I'm Brandan Schultz, member of the Military Seahawkers. Joining me, good buddy and Montana Seahawker, Adam Emmert.
Well, hello, Brandan. Happy Memorial Weekend to my favorite former seaman. Thank you for your service on this fine Memorial Day weekend. It's actually a beautiful Memorial Day weekend here in Montana. You know how often that's happened in my lifetime, Brandan?
Almost never.
Yeah, I literally could count it on less than 3 fingers. I'm pretty sure it generally pours buckets. So pretty cool. But good to be here with you this week, Brandan. Lots to cover. A really interesting week. Some stuff that's frustrating, some stuff that is truly heartbreaking, and just some other random news. But big full show for you guys this week.
Absolutely. Hopefully everyone is having or has had a nice Memorial Day weekend. I know the weather is nice for you, but your car situation not so much. But maybe we'll get into that later.
We will get into that later. There's a reason for that, and it's kind of my fault.
Okay. Well, as you mentioned, heartbreaking news this past week as Cortez Kennedy passed away at the age of 48. And so we want to talk about him. We're going to bring on Nesby Glasgow, who played with Cortez from 1990 to 1992. He was the Seahawks strong safety, played with Seattle for about 5 years, and also went to the University of Washington. So, the Northwest is Nesby's home, and we're going to bring him on. And we wanted to bring on somebody that actually knew Tez. How old were we in 1992 when he had his biggest season? 12, 13. So,
yeah, like literally 5th grade.
Right.
5th, 6th, I don't know. 8th grade, maybe? I don't know. Somewhere in there. Yeah.
Somewhere in there.
Yeah. I was worried about my bowl cut and whether or not I was going to ask Julie Hansen to dance at the next dance or not. That's what I was worried about.
You had other things.
Yeah.
Also, big news this last week was a Seth Wickersham story from ESPN that I think we need to talk about. A really long piece, kind of an investigative piece on his time visiting Seattle and talking to some of the players and getting into maybe a little bit why Richard Sherman was the way he was this past season, maybe why the defense, the title of the piece was, why Richard Sherman can't let the Super Bowl loss go and why that's a problem. So we're going to get into that. Also a big week for Michael Bennett in the news. So we'll talk a little Mike Bennett, and Colin Kaepernick came in for a visit this last week to the Seahawks along with quarterback Austin Davis. And Spike Lee attempted to break some news with regard to Kaepernick. We're going to get into all that as well. But Adam, let's start with Cortez Kennedy.
Yeah, Cortez Kennedy passes away this last week down in Florida. Far too early. The age of, what was it, 48?
48.
Look, I don't know. I mean, God, football gods, universe, whoever's in charge of this sort of thing. We do not have enough Hall of Famers to start losing them wicked early.
Right.
Okay. Like, that's not cool. And look, not only was he one of those dominant forces on defense that really just a game record and an amazing football player, but really an amazing human being. And it just, from everybody who's ever talked to him, spent time with them, you hear about what just an amazingly nice, genuine guy he was. And to lose him that early, it's flat out unfair. And I'm a little mad. But not at him, clearly. Just kind of at the universe in general. But just such a sad story, man. A real tragedy, no doubt.
Yeah, the early reports coming out of Florida was it seemed there wasn't anything suspicious.
Yes, there is. It happened in Florida. That's what's suspicious. Everything that bad happens in Florida.
I've always said about Cortez Kennedy, if there was one Hall of Famer or just one former Seahawk that I would want to add to the current team, it would be Cortez Kennedy, and that's nothing against Kenny Easley, Steve Largent,
or any of the current defensive linemen,
right? Or any of the current defensive linemen. It's just that to to add that kind of interior presence to this Seahawks defense. I know a lot of people would like to add Walter Jones to the offensive line, but I just think having that dominant interior force of Cortez Kennedy and that 1992 season where just unbelievable statistics for an interior defensive lineman, 14 sacks.
Yeah.
14 sacks. I mean, his 3-year run from 91 to 93, he had 6.5 sacks, then 14 sacks, then 6.5 sacks again. So 27 sacks over 3 seasons. And then look at his tackles. The number of tackles that he had, 73 tackles in 91, 92 tackles in 1992, and then another 77 in 93. From a dude in the interior, you do not see those kinds of numbers.
No, not even close. I mean, that's what really made him stand out as a defensive player, is just his complete and utter dominance in the way he was so disruptive from that interior spot, where usually those guys are block eaters. I mean, let's just be honest about it. I mean, you ball snapped, you stand up and you just push as hard as you can on the guy in front of you, and usually maybe they put 2 dudes on you and nobody goes anywhere. It's just a stalemate. But not with Tez. The athleticism was off the charts, let alone the strength, and then the determination. You combine all that, it makes an all-time special player. And there's a reason why he's in the Hall of Fame. There's a reason why he's in the Ring of Honor. And there's a reason why every 12 out there that was aware of Cortez Kennedy's career and the human being was truly, truly just bummed out to hear this news.
My biggest memory of Cortez Kennedy was a little bit later, actually, in 1999. And I just remember just how excited the fan base was at that particular time, having gone the long drought of making it to the playoffs. And finally, in 1999, this was Cortez Kennedy's first chance to play in a playoff game. And it kind of toward the downside of his career. Mike Holmgren had just taken over the team, brought him to the playoffs in his first season as the Seahawks coach. And just the excitement that you could tell from the players on the team that Cortez Kennedy was going to get his first chance to win a playoff game. There was people were fired up for him and fired up for the team. And unfortunately, Dan Marino, stupid Dan Marino, Adam, had to come and ruin the Seahawks' chances. And the Seahawks were up on the Dolphins in the fourth quarter, and the Dolphins come back to win that game.
Dude, Florida was tough on Cortez in his adult life, man.
Oh my gosh!
I mean, that's just,
and he moved there, but
yeah, I know.
It is tough. Where he went to school in Miami. That was a lot of great players in the early '90s coming out of the University of Miami.
Oh, the U. They were a football factory back then. There's no doubt about that. Jimmy Johnson at the helm.
Yeah, 1990 draft was when Cortez came into the league. The Seahawks moved up from their number 8 spot to number 3 overall, swap picks with the Patriots, and able to get Cortez Kennedy at the 3rd overall pick. Junior Seau, another Hall of Famer to come out of that draft. Emmitt Smith was picked up by the Cowboys in that draft at number 17. So some big name players. Shannon Sharp also in that draft, all the way down at the 7th round. Mm-hmm. Pretty good company of Hall of Famers in that 1990 season.
A lot of talent. And look, you just read off some of those names there, Brandon. Are there really any of those other players that you would have rather had than Tez out of that draft class?
No. I mean, at the time, we got Chris Warren in that 1990 draft. And I mean, sure, he's not Emmitt Smith, but still, I think the number 2 all-time rushing leader for the Seahawks was Chris Warren.
Correct. I mean, you hear those other names, Junior Seau, and you compare that to Tez, and you're like, yeah, Junior Seau was a hell of a player, no doubt about it, a Hall of Famer in his own right. And you go, would I want him or Tez? And you think about that. That's tough, man. I don't think you can take Seau over Tez, and he had such name recognition throughout the league, right? And then you think Emmitt Smith versus Tez. And look, I've always been of the opinion that Emmitt Smith was very much a product of where he was at.
Sure.
I'm a talented back, don't get me wrong, but not an all-time great. I would much rather have Cortez Kennedy than Emmitt Smith. Emmitt Smith would have been out of the league in 3 years if he had played for the Seahawks during that time frame. In my humble opinion.
I wouldn't go that. I know you're a little bit more down, but
out of the league.
I think you could say, Chris Warren coming out of that class could have gone to the Cowboys and had just as good a seasons behind, with that, playing with Troy Aikman and Michael Irvin and that offensive line, man.
Yeah. I mean, they had a tremendous, that was it was just like their offensive line is today. I mean, they had some of the premier offensive linemen of their day during those Super Bowl runs
just
for the Cowboys.
Huge dudes.
Yeah, I would have. I would still take Tez at that spot if I had to go back to 1990, just for everything that he brought to the field, and then what he meant to the franchise, and then what he meant to the community. Look, there's a home run pick. He's an absolute home run for this franchise, and somebody that I don't think as a 12 you could have enough appreciation for.
Well, I think it's a good time to bring on Nesby Glasgow. Nesby went to college at the University of Washington. He was drafted by the Baltimore Colts in the 8th round of the 1979 NFL draft and had an incredible career in the NFL. Played from 79 up until 1992 was his last year with the Seahawks. Played 5 years with Seattle at the safety position. Nesby, welcome to the show.
Hey, it's a pleasure to be here. How you doing, Brandan?
I am doing well. So, Nesby, you played with Cortez Kennedy from 1990 when he was drafted up to your last year in the league in 92. And I'm sure you had interactions with him as a Seahawks alum after that. What was Cortez like?
When I got to the Seahawks, it's late in my career, back in my 10th year. And I think a year or two after that, they drafted Cortez. And the one thing about Cortez, he was always a team guy. He'd have get-togethers at his house where everybody would just show up, and it'd be like a bonding. Everybody getting to know each other, just having a fun time. He was always upbeat and fun, and he was the type of guy that you knew in the heat of things that there was not going to be any quitting him. He was not going to back down. But his personality was so open and inclusive. I always thought it was funny when we flew. He was terrified of flying. That was the craziest thing to me, because I'd always say to Cortez, Tez, you have no control up in the air, so why are you concerned about it? If we go down or not, you have no control. So, and he's, oh, no, I just don't like flying, man. It just bothers me, blah, 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 blah. I said, okay. So almost every time we go somewhere, if I have to fly, he'd be a little concerned, but, he'd get on the plane. This is the worst part about being in the NFL flying.
That's a good story.
I think if you ask any of the guys that played with Cortez and you wanted to rate him as a teammate, he'd be a 5-star. He'd get 10 dots instead of 9 out of 10 dots. I mean, he was just the kind of guy that you knew that he would never back down. He would never quit on you. That, in the end, if you was in that foxhole, you would want him next to you, because you have somebody that you can rely on and count on. And, his word was his bond. And so when you play with guys that are physically that talented, but then, they also are caring and supportive of others, that's a special guy. And that's the kind of guy he was. He never looked down on anybody. His whole deal was that, we are stronger together than we are apart.
Well, so often you hear guys that are ultra talented type, Hall of Famer type guys, and on the personality side, they kind of tend to rub people the wrong way, but that doesn't sound like Cortez at all.
No, they are buttholes. You're absolutely right. So Tez was more of a prankster. He was the prankster type of guy. He tried to do things, but he was never the one that was going to put somebody down. And I think sometimes those guys that are ultra physically talented will have a tendency to want to put somebody down because they look at themselves as being special.
Cortez was incredibly special. You were there the year that he earned Defensive Player of the Year in 1992. He had 14 sacks, 92 tackles from an interior defensive lineman. What do you remember about him as Cortez, the football player?
He was that same guy every day. That's what I mean. Is that I think sometimes when guys reach that level that Cortez reached in the NFL, sometimes they change. Sometimes they become a different guy. He still was that same guy. When I would see him, in the off seasons, in years past, he was still that same guy. Very, very quiet, very reserved. The game never changed who he was. First of all, the game never changed who Cortez Kennedy was.
What do you remember about that 1992 season? Was there anything in particular that stood out to you? As a defense, did it feel like you were doing something really special despite the fact that on the offensive side of the ball, there was the struggles? Or was it such a team in the way that you just kind of all lost as a team?
No, we lost as a team, but, I think there's always that point where, you are going to try to, regardless of what's going on around you, you are still going to try to perform and make plays and try to do the best you can in the area that you're responsible for. And to me, that's what really shows that you are a true professional, a true veteran, because it's easy to quit when things aren't going well, and the things that aren't going well, you have no control of. So that really defines who you are as a person and an athlete. If things are going wrong that you have no control of, and you are still at least trying to play at a high level, then that defines who you are.
So, Nesby, we were just asking a little bit about that 92 season and the idea that the defense had played really well and the offense was, not quite up to par. We hear a lot of stories over the last, 4 or 5 months or so about there being a bit of a schism within this current Seahawks group between the defense and the offense to a degree. Is that something that is a fairly natural thing in a locker room to crop up if there is a big disparity between two sides of the ball? I mean, is it a team do teams naturally kind of fracture along the lines of defense and offense, or is this something that's maybe overblown in your mind?
I would hope that is something that's overblown, because I'm going to get up on my pedestal a little bit and preach somewhat. I've always said that for me, football is the greatest team sport in the world. It's one of those sports where everybody has to be playing at a certain level for you to be successful. Now, especially on defense. Now, on offense, you can have that outstanding receiver or that running back that can be a game changer in and of itself. But defensively, you can have a great secondary if defensive line doesn't put any pressure on the quarterback. No matter how good you are in the secondary, it's going to be an issue. I think it crosses the line. Like defensive guys, we can have that internal dialogue. Hey, you guys need to pick it up. But when you start crossing over to the offense and trying to dictate to them, then that's a recipe for dysfunctionality. And that's something that you saw happening with the Seahawks this year, is that they weren't that inclusive group all the way. And I think for the most part, those guys are probably as solid as it comes as a team. But for whatever reason, the team got fractured somewhat. You can look at, some of the defensive leaders and some of the things, without going and, pointing fingers, some of the things that took place there. That wasn't good. As a player, I would never allow for my teammates to point at another teammate or to have the perception that it wasn't me, it was my teammate that screwed up. Because I would always tell them, we are in this together. And in fact, it happened to me one time where, a guy did that, and we got to the sideline. I told him if he ever does that again, then it's going to be on with me and him. Because I thought that there's no way you can be a solid football team and it's about you sharing with the fans that it wasn't your fault. That's not what we're here for. We're here to play as hard as we can for one another and to try to bring about, some type of championship and win games. And you can't do that when you are so busy trying to let everybody in the world know, hey, that wasn't my fault. That was so-and-so's fault. That doesn't work. There's no team in that to me. That's you trying to be more concerned with what people are thinking about you and you as a player. And, If you are around playing a long time, then that will let you know that you're a good player. They're not going to keep a guy around who can't play, who can't make plays, who can't do the things that they're asking you to do.
Nesby, looking back at your time in Seattle, there was one thing that really jumped out at me statistically, and that's that you had more sacks than interceptions playing as a safety. 5.5 sacks, 3 interceptions. What was more fun for you?
I like being the aggressive little guy. I think, when I look back on my career, I remember we were playing against the Houston, the Oilers. Mm-hmm. Warren Moon was the quarterback. And I remember I dropped 3 interceptions against Warren. And I don't know if I ever got over that. I thought it was easier for me to rush and try to get a sack. And I mean, even look at the number of fumbles that I caused and stuff, I decided that I would be more successful doing that. There are times where I probably should try to make a play on the ball instead of hitting the receiver. So I think, when you have an honest conversation with yourself, if I had to go over and replay my career, the one thing I would do over would be more of a ball hawk, because I know there were times that I probably could have and should have made a play on the ball instead of making the play on the receiver, doing the easy thing, knocking the ball, hitting him to make sure he didn't catch it.
Now, you were also with Seattle during that transition from Chuck Knox to head coach Tom Flores. Now, Tom was the general manager at the time. You see, you're laughing. I know there's a story here.
That's fantastic.
Oh no! It was funny because when Tom Flores was the general manager, he didn't want to pay me, but then when he became the head coach, he did. So I thought that was hilarious. Oh. I think when you're a coach, there are intangibles that you don't know about as a GM, and so now that you're the coach, you look at a guy differently. You just don't look at his physical attributes; you look at what else he brings to the team.
Now, as the GM, he was the guy that signed that drafted Robert Blackman in the second round. So, as a vet during that time, and that was the same draft that Cortez was brought in. As a vet at that time, seeing a young guy potentially coming in to take your job, do you remember what went through your mind around that time?
No, I mean, you know what? I had already played a long time, and if you would talk to Robert Blackman today, he would tell you I was one of his greatest teammates. When they drafted him, my understanding, they actually drafted him, he was going to be a free safety, but then Jeannie Robb played so well, they had him play strong. And I remember, I want to say after the third game, what was Joe's last name? God, he was my coach in Baltimore too. Now I know I've been hitting my head too many times. Anyway, I went to him and I said, Joe, he's not doing what we need him to do. So let me show him how to play the position, for 1 or 2 games. Let me show him how to play the position for 1 or 2 games, and then I'm good. Because, right now he's not doing the things that he needs to do that's going to allow us to win. And he did it. But what happened was I played so well, I ended up, starting the rest of the year. And what was funny was that I was trying to tell him things, as the veteran guy, and he would never listen to me. But then, after I ended up starting and stuff, and he watched me play, years later, after he retired and stuff, he called me up to have that conversation with me about that. And he said, for you to do what you did, he said, he said, I never forgot it. He said, you really were trying to help me, even though, I was the guy replacing you, taking your job. You were really trying to help me. And what I told him, I said, to me, it's always been about team, not me. And I had played a long enough time where, if they wanted to keep me out there, they could. If they didn't, then they didn't. But point being is that I wanted to give the team the best chance to win. And when you first got here, you being on the field and not me wasn't our best chance to win. And I said, I didn't want you to take this the wrong way. And then I even told him that about the deal I made with, Joe Vitt. Mm-hmm. That's the name. With Coach Vitt, I said, I told Joe, hey, give me a game or 2 so he can at least, see how it's supposed, because I'm an old dude at that time, but, I could still play. I still had physical attributes that were as good, if not better, than a lot of the younger guys. So it's kind of like, well, old dude can still play, so let's leave him out there. So that's what they did.
So how strange is it for you, being a guy who was, 5'10", not even 200 pounds, playing strong safety, and now you see a guy like Cam Chancellor, who's just, a monster out there?
Well, I've always said that God blessed me with the ability to run into big guys, and more times than not win those battles. I mean, I've been doing that since I was a little kid. I mean, from Pop Warner to high school, even to college. I have teammates, tight ends and guards, would be like telling me they would hate to run into me. I mean, I have offensive linemen that I've sent out the game. So because I knew how to somehow exert and build up a lot of power in that short little box where it's time to hit, I could unleash a lot of power. I was always used to knocking 280-pound guys down, which was kind of crazy. So, but that was something I could do, and I knew I could do it. I don't know how to this day I could consistently do that, but I was accustomed to running into big guys and not losing.
Well, Nesby, really want to thank you for coming on the show. Now, before you go, I know that you've been really active in the community in your time after the NFL. Do you have anything going on this summer that Seahawks fans would want to know about?
Well, yes. Actually, I'm involved in the tour industry now. It's a company called Executive Global Tours, and we do celebrity tours with current and former players. In fact, next February, we haven't put it together, but we're going to be doing a trip with Cliff Averill to France, and we're doing another trip with KJ Wright to South Africa. So they can look out for that. We're going to get together probably in June or end of July and get that worked out. But it's to raise money for both of their charities.
Oh, that's outstanding. So now, when you say celebrity tours, are you talking about fans being able to go on these tours too?
Yeah, so that's the basis of it. We get the fans to go hang out. We have golf. We have, like when we go to South Africa, we're going to do golf, safari, wine tasting. So it's going to be like an 8 or 9 day trip to South Africa. So probably I'd look around about July, August at the latest, we'll have that out.
Very cool.
And that's executiveglobaltours.com, people. Okay.
Yeah, we'll keep a lookout for that. And anytime you want to come back on the show, maybe once you have the details ironed out too, we can talk about that. Because I know we didn't get to everything, but I know
No, we did not.
But I really appreciate your time coming on and telling a few stories about Tez and about your time with the Seahawks.
Oh, great teammate. I mean, he's up there with one of my all-time great teammates. No question about it.
To my dad, Joe Harris, you always been a great balancing factor in my life. I can remember not doing my chores right, cutting the yard, and you made me cut the yard grass at 5 o'clock in the morning in the dark. You said do it right the first time, and you won't have to do it again. I got the point. Don't take the shortcut. But since I'm older, if I didn't cut it right in the daytime, what the heck I'm going to do in the nighttime? I'm just throwing that out there right now. That don't seem right to me.
Thanks to Nesby for coming on the show, sharing some thoughts, sharing some stories about his time with the team. One thing that really stood out to me, the pride he took in being kind of a smaller guy, just able to level dudes. I enjoyed hearing that.
Yeah, it kind of reminds you of the Earl Thomas mentality a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Same kind of thing. It was a super entertaining interview and a cool guy. I really appreciate that he was able to make some time and bring his perspective from somebody who actually really knew the man, actually played with him. And that was super cool. We were really hoping that we could find somebody that could speak to that. And big thanks to Nesby for making the time.
Well, let's get into some of the news from this last week. I think maybe the biggest news item was that Colin Kaepernick actually came into Seattle and made a visit. And then after that, weekend rolls around and you see Spike Lee tweet out or put a post up on Instagram that the Seahawks had actually signed Colin Kaepernick. Now that he had taken that post down, but it kind of, when I see that, it makes me think that this is within the realm of possibility that Colin Kaepernick could end up being the backup quarterback for the Seahawks.
Yeah, it's a possibility. I'm curious if Spike thought that he had like an inside man, but clearly somehow he ended up getting bamboozled by all of this. And at the end of the day, he thought to himself, I got to do the right thing. And he went ahead and deleted the tweet, which was cool. But even so, I think when Spike Lee was thinking about it, when he was going to put that up, he thought Colin Kaepernick, he thought about that guy. He got game. So I really feel like that Spike, maybe he does have some inside information that we didn't have. But we'll see what happens in the end. That's for sure.
Are you working in movie titles that Spike Lee has directed?
Those are all Spike Lee movies.
Well done. I think I could see you doing that on the fly.
You like that?
I'm a little bit impressed. Yeah,
well, I learned all that during my school days.
Yeah. You didn't work in Jungle Fever though, so.
Well, I almost did, but that's interesting. I mean, Spike Lee somehow maybe breaking news. I'm not sure. Obviously, there hasn't been a contract reached yet. Maybe they were waiting until after Memorial Day to announce it because with the whole military thing and Colin Kaepernick, maybe, you wait till after Memorial Day to announce the signing. I'll say this straight up. If they did sign him, as far as the money aspect goes, I feel like it's a complete and utter waste. I'm frustrated on that front, and I've said it a million freaking times when we talked about the Eddie Lacy stuff. Spend that money on an offensive lineman. I'm not going to go into that for another freaking hour for all of you guys, but that's just frustrating to me. I really feel like Trevon Boykin is a fine backup. I'm totally comfortable with him. I think Colin Kaepernick has the ability to play still, no doubt about it, but I'm not sure that he's $2 million better than Trevon Boykin,
Right.
And so that's at the end of the day the problem for me.
I think for the people out there that have that problem, I mean, if you think that he's terrible, then just wait until Trevon Boykin beats him out for the job in the preseason. I mean, Jari Evans came in, right, with a veteran type deal. Sure. And that ended up not costing the team all that much money, but they had a dude to see what they had in a potential backup with Jari Evans. Now, It turned out to be maybe a little bit of a mistake, but getting rid of him. But the idea that you can bring him in and actually have a little bit more of a competition throughout OTA, if they bring him in now, they have him through OTAs and the mini camp before getting into training camp in August. So, but I do understand where, I mean, there's people that are just absolutely against Colin Kaepernick coming to the team.
Geez Louise.
And
I would say get over yourself. That's what I would say.
Well, especially when I see people ready to turn in their fan card.
Oh my Lord, are you serious?
Yeah, I've seen it.
Okay, there's things on this planet to get upset about, and there's things to not to, and this falls under the category of to not to. Come on, man.
I couldn't see myself turning in my fan card over a backup quarterback.
Oh hell no.
Like if you're a Vikings fan and when they bring in Brett Favre, like I could see, you know what, I'm going to take a break from watching Vikings football for a couple years because I dislike Brett Favre so much, and for him to be our starting quarterback, like maybe like if your sports hatred runs that deep for a particular player that you need to maybe take a little break, okay, but over a backup quarterback that's not going to see the field, I can't go with you.
Well, and that's just the thing that people making such a big deal out of it. Like, look, he's going to hold a clipboard.
Right.
I mean, so what? And I mean, hey, I'm glad that at the end of the day, now that this looks like it's something that could very much happen, that we both came out that very first week after he decided to take a knee, and both are like, yeah, it's who gives a crap? It's fine. He can do what he wants. Because America, hooray! So yeah,
with the protest, I didn't like the way that it made me feel, but I understand that that's a me problem.
Right? Exactly. Yeah. Am I wholly against it? No. Do I feel like the resources could be spent better somewhere else? Yeah, kind of. Unless maybe you're thinking hey, we bring in Kaepernick. Maybe if Russ goes down for 2-3 games, Kaepernick comes in and plays well. And now you have a trade chip that you can flip into some more valuable assets the following year. Maybe that's what it is.
I said it on the Ring of Honor page, and I'll say it here. The best case scenario is that Russell Wilson, with the new baby, happens to sleep in the day of the 49ers game. He can't get to the game because of traffic. And Colin Kaepernick steps in as the starting quarterback against the San Francisco 49ers and puts up 40 points on the board. And then that same week, Tom Brady goes down to injury. And then we trade Kaepernick to the Patriots for their first round pick. And then the Patriots lose out the season and we get a top 10 draft pick out of it. That's the best case scenario.
If that happens, put all your money on black, Brandon, because that'd be amazing. That would be fantastic. I like where your head's at on that one.
Well, moving on, a big week for Michael Bennett. Had a back and forth with Stephen A. Smith.
I didn't see this.
This was so Michael Bennett came out and kind of gave his support for Colin Kaepernick. And Stephen A. Smith went after him because he's not a Kaepernick fan, and it's not for the protest that Kaepernick did. It's for the fact that Cap said that he didn't vote in the last election. Mm-hmm. That's apparently Stephen A. Smith's problem with him. And Michael Bennett went back and defended him even more, saying, here's a guy that goes out and does all kinds of things within his community. For you to get on him and for that to be the one sticking point, that one reason to why you can't support the things that Kaepernick's done in the community to help make it a better place, that's being kind of petty.
It's beyond petty because let's be real. Do you really feel like either the Democratic or the Republican nominee for president this last year represented the values that Colin Kaepernick was trying to fight for at that time? I mean, do you really think either of them did? Not really. So I can completely understand why he was like, meh, I'll pass on that, but yet still put my money where my mouth is and go out and try to affect real change instead of filling in a bubble on a voting card and turning it in. So yeah, if Stephen A. Smith wants to be that freaking petty, which wouldn't shock me at all because he's kind of a petty human being, have at it, Haas, but you're on the wrong side of history.
All this Colin Kaepernick defense from us, I think is...
I think we've been consistent on the issue.
I know we've been consistent, but for a guy who's been a former rival, like you build up all the sports hate for the rivalry, and then to have to be defensible in other regards, that's not easy.
I don't know, man. If I'd have been a Vikings fan that year, Brett Favre switched over, and I'd have been the first Brett Favre cheerleader. I'm like, remember those teams, man? They were a quarterback away, and here comes.
Well, they were one game shy of going to the Super Bowl. New Orleans, he threw the pick late in the game, and New Orleans ends up going to the Super Bowl.
Exactly, but they had such horrific quarterback play leading up to that point, but with a lot of other talent on defense and at running back that they were excited about it. So yeah, I mean, this is the NFL these days. Guys don't stay on teams for 30 years. You know what I mean? Like these are because who plays 30 years except for Tom Brady? But
he's the only guy.
Right. So there's going to be turnover in the league. There's going to be guys that come and go. And honestly, on a personal level, I mean, heck, we've defended Cap since those allegations, the false allegations that were made against him down in Florida.
Right.
I mean, so I don't. It feels consistent to me, so it doesn't feel weird.
Okay.
I feel the same exact way about it.
I just want the good old days back.
It's still hilarious to think that there was a legitimate argument of who was the better quarterback, Russell Wilson, Colin Kaepernick, or RG3.
Yeah. I still don't think I could get into the bicep kissing thing for the celebration, even if he were to put it on the Seahawks. Do it? I don't know. Does he still score touchdowns?
He scored touchdowns last year, man. He had a decent year.
I don't know if he rushed for any touchdowns though. I think he actually has to run it in to do
is that the rule?
I think so. I don't think on a touchdown pass you see it.
Oh, well.
Or maybe they just don't show it. But
I
don't watch a lot of 49ers football, Adam. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, all I know is that we're probably not going to find out because if he is signed, he's not going to see the field.
But getting back to Michael Bennett and his big week, he also tweeted that he wanted to boycott the Seattle Times after Matt Calkins, the opinion writer there, called him childish And this was kind of all around the same type of deal. And this, I mean, the bad thing about Matt Calkins was the fact that this article came out just after Michael Bennett's big fundraiser the previous weekend. So, Bennett's doing this good work in the community, raising money and that sort of thing. And then Calkins comes out with this article and not only he called him childish, but he blasted him for not apologizing to Bill Wixie. You remember after the playoff game when Michael Bennett kind of went on the tirade in the locker room. And then Calkins went on, I think 710 ESPN, and G. Scott mentioned to him, said, yeah, that Michael Bennett did actually apologize to Bill Wixie. And so it kind of blew apart one of his biggest arguments against Michael Bennett in that Seattle Times story. And the cool thing is that Calkins came back out and said, you know what? I made a mistake. I was kind of lazy that I didn't give Bill Wixie a call and actually find out for sure if he had been apologized to by Michael Bennett or not. And for that, it was a good apology.
It was a hell of an apology. Look, I will give everybody a lot of grace that comes out and says, this is what I screwed up. This is how I screwed it up. And I'm genuinely sorry about it. And this is what I'm going to do going forward. You give me those four things when you're on the wrong side of an issue. I wash my hands and say, you bet, man. Like, yeah. I feel you.
We screw up. People screw up. It happens.
Yeah, you're a human being and stuff. So, but you don't see a lot of journalists doing that these days. And the way that journalists are maligned across the country these days, it's nice to see one really step up and say, hey, this is where I screwed up.
Definitely. And so it seemed as though Michael Bennett and Matt Calkins buried the hatchet on that one.
Do you think he did it just because Mike Bennett was like, none of us are talking to the Seattle Times now if you're going to stand behind this?
No, I don't think so. I think judging by the way that piece was written, I think he genuinely felt as though he made a mistake by not doing researching the piece on that one item in particular, because I know a lot of people who were upset and were still upset. And I think they were happy to hear that he has, in fact, apologized to Wixie about going off on him the way he did in the locker room.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? And then Bennett did it behind closed doors, and I mean, another classy move, right? Like, let's not bring this out in the open. I don't need to like apologize to you publicly just so it makes me look good. Like, I'm going to apologize to you for real, like man to man, and that's enough for me.
Right.
I like that.
Yeah, and I saw some people who were, well, and even Calkins kind of mentioned in his apology that he thought he should have done it publicly, but like you said,
the apology is not for everybody else. The apology is for Wixie.
Right.
So if Wixie was cool with it and Bennett felt better about it, problem solved. And in fact, like, I like the idea of handling a lot of those things behind closed doors, man.
Yeah. Not everything needs to be public.
Yeah, I mean, especially in this day and age where, like, good Lord, everybody wears their entire life on their, Facebook feed or whatever, and you get every detail of, like, what color their toenails are painted to, why they hate their mother-in-law. And it's like, man, it's time to keep things, a little more in-house. Maybe hold some of that back.
And lastly, he called an ESPN article garbage. And this was the article from Seth Wickersham on ESPN that really went into detail, that titled "Why Richard Sherman Can't Let Go of Seattle's Super Bowl Loss." And Michael Bennett clearly not a fan of that article. There were definitely points where I could see in this article where a player like Michael Bennett would take an issue with this particular article. But at the same time, there was, I think, a lot of information, a lot of factual information in the article as well.
Turns out it might have been fairly factual. I'll tell you straight up, Brandon, when this article first came out and I read through it, one of the things that really stood out to me was the idea that there was a lot of quotes from sources throughout the article that didn't put their name to anything. And then the one guy who did put his name to a lot of quotes was former running backs coach Sherman Smith, who was just let go, right?
Yeah.
So you'd think if anybody's got an axe to grind, it could be Sherman Smith. And yet everything that Sherman Smith said was did not really back up the premise that the Wickersham was trying to work with, right? They were almost rebuttals and talking about how, Pete doesn't call out Russell Wilson in front of everybody. He does it behind closed doors because that's how you do things, and he handles it the right way and things like that. But boy, there was a lot of little petty things throughout the story, right, that kept popping up, and I found that to be interesting. I mean, the idea that like players still feel like Russell Wilson's not black enough, or just that he's coddled by management or things like that. It floors me that feeling might still be in the locker room. And at first I wrote it off, but after hearing G. Scott come out and actually back up some of these claims, and he's a guy that literally has real connections within the locker room. And if he comes out and confirms a fair amount of it, well, it's probably true.
I could see how about 90% of it could be true. To me, it reads a lot like a Ben Mesrick novel. You know,
I don't know who that is.
Ben Mesrick is a dude. He wrote the book Straight Flush that I recommended a while back. That the movie 21. He wrote the book about the MIT students that went to Vegas.
Kevin Spacey's in that movie, right?
Yeah. He takes a story that is factual, but then he puts in a lot of the fictional stuff around it just to make it sound good and tie the story together and kind of make it a real story versus have it just be a documentary. And there's just a lot of little bits in that where the biggest problem, I think, for me was the story was built partly on the premise that Richard Sherman was destined to be traded, right? And that all the problems all of the problems on the team could be tied back to that one particular play in the Super Bowl. So hearing from just even some of the interviews from Seth Wickersham and what he was talking about, it seemed like he clearly had that idea in mind for how he wanted the story to turn out in the end. When you have a predetermined outcome for how you want to write the article, and then you go and you do the research to support how you want the article to turn out, that bothers me in journalism.
Well, and the hilarious part is if you read all the way through this super long piece, you get to the last 2, 3, 4 paragraphs, and it's all like he just let all this out that he had to say, and then was like, yeah, but, then Sherman showed up, and apparently, he's in good shape with his teammates, and, everything's moving forward, and, blah, blah, blah. Like, he basically refutes all of his premises in the last couple paragraphs for the most part, and, like, totally unravels his whole point that he had predetermined to go in with.
Well, I think you're referring just to the last few paragraphs where he goes back and he talks about Sherman and Wilson interacting after the Super Bowl win. And so for to go through all that and then end it kind of on an uplifting note, but an uplifting note that happened prior to all of the things that he's saying. The other problem I have with the article is it tries to create some kind of rift, as if the rift is between Richard Sherman and Russell Wilson. But there's nothing within the story that shows a genuine rift between the two. It starts off with the one quote where he says, "You bleeping suck," after intercepting a pass from him in practice back in.
The fact he made that into a big deal.
Right. It's trash talk out on the field.
Good catfish. So for those of you who haven't who've tuned in more recently to the show and haven't heard Jared come on the show, our good buddy, Jared's a cocky SOB, and apparently I've got a little of that in me too. When we compete at stuff, like, and I love him, right? Like a brother. Like, I'd die for him tomorrow if you needed to. But the idea that I know I've said things far worse to him than that while we're just competing at yard games,
right?
Let alone at like a practice somewhere doing something like that. I mean, it didn't mean nothing. Like, for him to be like, oh, well, he said that, so that clearly he freaking hates him.
Right.
Well, no, man, you're just talking
understand,
crap.
Adam. I understand that you're a high level Beersby player. And so
Super
there are a
level.
lot of similarities between Beersby and playing NFL football out on the practice field.
There's a ton of similarities, man. I mean, look, there's a mental focus. There's a raw athletic ability that you need to have. And then something that you don't have on the football field that you have during Beersby is the fact that you really need to be able to hold your liquor while you do it. And, I try really hard to work on my tolerance, and I'm pretty proud of it. So I think that, the dedication level must be high to be a high-level Beersby player, much like an NFL starter.
Clearly. And, getting back to the Sherman and Wilson the fact that he goes back later on, and we all remember when Richard Sherman said he was going to take the press credentials away from the ESPN.
Wasn't it Jim Moore?
Jim Moore. That's who it was.
Yeah. Okay.
And then Russell Wilson later on starts off the press conference by saying, don't make me take y'all's credentials away. And so Seth is pointing at that as some kind of division between the two players. And to me, that just seems like ball busting that you do with your buddies.
It's called a joke.
So the fact, and I think that's where Michael Bennett would really take issue with this. The fact that they're trying to build on this idea that it's a division within the team between the defense and the offense, and in particular between Sherman and Wilson. And he even points out that, they're not really friends. They're not really enemies. They're just, they're on the same, they happen to be on the same team together. Yeah. And that's fine. Out of how many guys, 53 guys that you have on the roster and plus practice squad guys, not everybody's going to be best friends with everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And you don't have to go and drink hot chocolate and sing Kumbaya after every game. I mean, I have a lot of very functional work relationships. I mean, are we best of friends? No. Do you make the same small talk chit chat that you do with regular people that you just kind of know? Sure. Do you loathe the person? Not even close.
Right.
Like, I mean, I don't understand how that's not a healthy relationship. But the other thing that I do think there's an element and kernel of truth to is the idea that there is a level of resentment between the defense and the offense. And that's something I can buy.
That I can buy that too. And I thought that was one thing that the article did explain fairly well. That idea of Sherman being one of the guys, and maybe some of the other defensive players as well, having that feeling that here was a defense that was on the cusp of being up there with the greats, being a dynasty type defense. Mm-hmm. And the fact that they were potentially one play away from having that recognition of that kind of dynasty. But at the same time, that dynasty also goes over to Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson. It's just, they somehow seem to, I think, and I could see how there would be players on the team that would be resentful of the idea that they could push that type of feeling out of their minds so easily.
Yeah, I think that's a little bit it. And I think it's just a matter of the passage of time, right? And what I mean by that is that window for the defensive core of this team is much shorter than it is for Russell Wilson's window. And it's just the nature of playing defense, in the way your body breaks down. And when you have leaders like Cam and Earl and Sherm and Bobby and all those guys looking at this thing, they're saying, we only have the next 2 years after this year. I mean, maybe another 3 years total, tops, maybe 2, with this defensive core. And we got to stop screwing around. Like, you guys got to pull your weight, because it's time for us to get our chips. We want to be remembered as great. And I think that's probably a legitimate feeling within the locker room.
And Seth does point out the fact that, the Seahawks did have a 10-point lead going to the fourth quarter of that Super Bowl against Tom Brady. And yes, it's partly on the defense for giving up those points. It's also partly on the offense, too. Remember back to that game, in the fourth quarter, the Seahawks could not stay on the field on offense. Yeah. And so it makes it tough when Tom Brady's on the other side of the ball and you can't get a first down, and you're immediately turning the ball over to the defense. And Cliff Averill was out with a concussion at that point of the game. And so they could really tied Michael Bennett down, and Sherman was also wounded at that point. It was, and Cam Chancellor, sprained his MCL going into that game. So
by Earl Thomas's shoulder was shredded.
Those guys were worn down by the fourth quarter, and as we saw in this last Super Bowl, Tom Brady in the fourth quarter not giving up. So I can see how that resentment could still be on the offense a little bit. It's just that there has to be some ownership that it is a team sport.
Absolutely. And then there also has to be, to live life mentally healthy, you need to be able to let go of failure. And hey, I'm not saying it needed to be that next season specifically, or even the season after that. But at some point, you have to be able to make peace with that to actually be able to move on. If you really do want to fulfill that potential and win more championships, then you need to be able to let that go and move on for the sake of the team, so that you have a unified front so that you can actually go and compete for championships. But if you're still bitter over it, it's going to be hard to do that. And I'm not sure that they are still bitter over it.
Yeah. And I think with all of the trade talks in the offseason with regard to Richard Sherman, I think that may have been what it takes for him mentally to kind of get back into it. And one interesting thing I read in the article, that piece of information that we hadn't really heard before, but the Seahawks were looking for 2 first-round picks from a bad team like the Browns or the Buffalo Bills. Right. And the idea that 2 first-round picks for one, if they were looking for 2 first-round picks, the idea, like we talked about, that every player is on the trading block. For 2 first-round picks, just about everybody on the team is available for a trade.
Yeah, 2 high first-round picks for a guy. Right. I'll consider that. Yeah, for pretty much everybody except for the franchise quarterback.
Right.
Just because they're hard to come by.
Yeah.
So, it really does make sense in the way that you put that. The article itself and the way this all went down, with some more offseason drama, no doubt about it. And I don't know. I just feel like at the end of the season, this will be something that nobody even remembers.
Sure. But it's an article to read to help get you through the offseason. And I don't think it's trash like Michael Bennett suggests. I don't think it's 100% gospel, but I think it's worth reading to at least get the general sense of why it would be difficult for some players to get over a crushing Super Bowl loss.
Yeah, and to be honest, too, if I were Russell Wilson's teammate and you put all the blood, sweat, and tears you do into everything, and you go through some adversity and some setbacks and things like that, and he looked at me with that sunny face and was just like, it's all okay, we're already going to win the next year, and that's just going to be fine. And like, I don't understand why you're so upset. Look, here's a puppy. Like, I would lose my catfish mind. Like, he would annoy me. I promise you. Like, there would be a part of me that was annoyed, which I think is really all the difference is. Like, right. with these guys, I think, sure, they're like, God, he's just too damn positive all the time.
Right.
And it would
tone it down a little bit.
Like he just whatever it is, like he's impossibly upbeat. Impossibly upbeat. And those people do get under my skin.
Well, and Carroll's to that point is similar in that way too.
Yeah, and that came across in the article too. That was one of those things, like what Wickersham was doing, that bothered me just a tiny bit, was you can tell like he got a general interview with Pete Carroll, with an axe to grind, and then went in and kind of got some things that worked towards his story, and then just tried to throw Carroll under the bus like at every opportunity. They're talking about how, he talked about this, that, and the other thing, ... and was impossibly positive and upbeat about it, or whatever he said.
Do you
know what I mean?
No, was this the first interaction he had with Pete Carroll?
Right, like this is what it's gonna be. I mean,
that's how he is.
That's how he is. It's how he's always been. How he always will be.
And that's one of the things I think. You just have to understand that while it may bother you for people to be overly positive, that's just how these guys are. You have to accept it.
Yeah. Not everything's not always awesome. Sometimes stuff just sucks, and I'll need you to say with me, "This sucks," and then I'll feel better.
Then you'll feel better. Big thanks to Seth Wickersham for giving us something to talk about this week. And we did have something planned. I think we're going to have to put this off till next week now. Talk a little bit about the 4-3 defense that the Seahawks run, and just how Malik McDowell is going to fit into that. I think that's what we're going to bring to you next week. Unless, we have some other big story that comes up in the media. This is locked and loaded. We got content for you for the down weeks.
Yeah. We're actually contenting ahead now.
I know.
Yeah.
Feels good.
Yeah. I feel pretty content with it.
Well, let's go ahead and take a break and come back. We will hear from some of our new members of the flock. We got some emails that came in, and of course, do better and better at life. And we are back, getting into the second half of the show. You know, we talked about Seth Wickersham in his article. I cannot hear his last name without thinking of Horton Hears a Who. You ever see that movie or read the book?
No.
The Wickersham brothers, like the evil monkeys that take the flower away from Horton that has all the Who's on it.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that evil Wickersham.
The Wickersham brothers.
Oh, wow. Well, hopefully there's not more. Hopefully Seth's brother isn't out there lurking with another story to drop on the Seahawks.
Exactly. Well, this last week was the Seahawkers annual banquet, and I went over there for that. It was a good time, so I wanted to bring on Paul Gates, the Seahawkers Central Council president. You may also know him as Bernie Hawk. We've had him on before, talk about his Bernie Hawk persona. But this last week, we had our Seahawkers annual banquet, and Paul joins us to talk a little bit about it. How you doing, Paul?
I'm doing great, Brandon. How are you?
I am well. I think most of us have recovered now from the past weekend of the Seahawkers banquet. And man, what a good time. You guys put together another great event this past week. We had some current Seahawks players there, a lot of former Seahawks players. How did the event go for you as one of the guys helping to put it all together?
Well, I'll tell you what, you have to speak for yourself on that recovery time, because we're already working on next year.
Well, you have a lot to overcome now, because now you're setting expectations really high, because we had Thomas Rawls show up. We had CJ Prosise show up to accept the Seahawkers Rookie of the Year award. Yep. And Warren Moon showed up. We had a Hall of Famer. You're back to back and having Hall of Famers at the event, with Walter Jones being there last year and Warren Moon this year. That's pretty incredible work by you, Paul.
Well, I'm setting the bar pretty high. I'm kind of shooting myself in the foot, because each year I'm doing everything I can and spending even more time to try and make it even better and bigger and get more Seahawkers involved. 250
people, I think, was the turnout this year. We're going to be able to do better next year?
Last year was about 250. This year we were closer to 280 with the last minutes. We were pushing that 300 mark pretty good with the special guests and everything. So we were under 300, but getting there.
We had some Seahawks alumni there as well. I mentioned Warren Moon, but Norm Johnson was there. Who some of the other guys that were there?
We really tried our best to get three eras. One of the original ideas for this banquet, the 2017, was to try and get the 40-year Seahawks. So we were hoping to get more of the 76 and 77 players. We did really well with Andrew Bolton. We had Tony Benjamin was super. Sammy Green got up on stage and talked a little bit about being a Seahawk and being what they feel about the Seahawk fans way back from the old 76, 77 Kingdome days. And one of the highlight films that Laura was playing during dinner was the 76 NFL films that I actually have a copy of. But then we had the middle guys. We had the fan favorites. We had Hillary Butler. Norm Johnson, of course, is a fan favorite locally. And then, of course, Marcus Trufant was our MC. And
that was really cool. Marcus Trufant, seeing him there up on stage. And after people won their prizes, took pictures with everybody, signed a lot of autographs. Marcus Trufant, a guy, one of those all-time Seahawks players, a guy that grew up in the Seattle area, went to Washington State for college, and then played essentially his entire NFL career in Seattle, apart from going and I think playing some preseason games with Jacksonville, but all of his regular season games in a Seahawks uniform.
Yeah, and then the fact that he went to Wazoo was still a local.
Yeah,
and then like you said, we had Thomas Rawls, who was great. He was up there to thank some of our Seahawk chapters that really helped with the Flint, Michigan water project. The Seahawker voted Rookie of the Year was C.J. Prosise, and he was great, and he was fun to have there, and his family was also there. And then Warren Moon, who is, just a legend.
And it was C.J. Prosise's birthday, too, and that was pretty neat.
Yep, that was something that we figured into the plan that worked out really well. And the team, the Seahawks, really support the Seahawkers, and that was one of the reasons that we had CJ, and we had Blitz, and the Seagulls, of course, and just all the support that the team has really gotten involved with the Seahawkers Booster Club, and they're really, really helping us out, not just here in Seattle, but all over. If you go to some of the events, the away games, you'll see Mike Flood, you'll see some of the Seahawk executives, and they're so instrumental in helping some of our rallies in some of the other cities and the other Seahawker chapters.
It's really cool. And, the other thing I wanted to ask you about, Seahawker of the Year, Joshua Bay was announced, and what a cool moment for him.
Oh, Josh is a star. It's really getting tough. That Seahawker of the Year, we've had some super members. We also had Mama Blue, who was the very first Seahawker of the Year ever.
Right.
With Josh and all the charities, all the you don't need to be a local president or a local achiever to win Seahawker of the Year anymore. The last few years we've had Carolina chapter, Amanda McDonald, for all the charities and she's worked with, and then Josh Bay. And it's so more than just showing up at the games or more than just being a fan. It's being involved in the communities and being involved with the team and just doing good. 12's for good.
And I think that's one of the things that really stood out to me from the banquet was just how many chapters are involved with the different charities. And it's really cool that so many could come together, like you mentioned the previous year with Amanda McDonald pulling together funds to help with the Flint, Michigan, with the water effort there. And then Joshua Bay helping, kind of rally people around the idea of building a home in Haiti, and the idea that we actually, were able to make that goal, combining all the chapters together and really pushing toward that one goal.
I do want to say to you and Tracy, thank you so much. You guys came through for us again with the military chapter. The anthem was wonderful. The honor guard, you guys did a fantastic job. We just really, love and respect you guys. And we hope we can count on you. And as we grow, we hope to grow our relationship with you too. And last year was we had a anthem and honor guard, and this year the anthem and the honor guard was even bigger.
Well, thank you for having it on Armed Forces Day and being able to recognize some of our service members. That's really special too. So we appreciate the thoughtfulness that goes into selecting the date as well.
Absolutely.
A big thanks to Paul Gates for coming back on the show, our Seahawkers Central Council president. And I think now it's time to welcome some new members of the flock, Adam.
Yes, all right. I knew we'd keep going strong here through the offseason on our goal to get to 300 patrons. Those of you who stepped up this week, you guys are amazing.
Well, talk about people who stepped up this week. Our Flocktimus Maximus, DCH. Doug Chancel-Harry, he reached out to me and asked if there was anything that we needed for this upcoming season. And I keep a wish list of 2 or 3 things on it that I know that, kind of the next thing on our wish list of items. And with one of those being Small Batch Audio is coming out with a podcasting deck that it's supposed to be really gee whiz in terms of audio quality. And Adam Curry, who it was the co-inventor of podcasting, is creating this piece of machinery that it's supposed to make you sound pretty good. So it was something I'd been eyeballing. It's a little bit pricey, and DCH came through and said, because it's I think $497, and
holy smokes,
is how much this piece of equipment costs. And I said, yeah, we're kind of looking at this, and DCH sent in a donation for $500 to cover it. So Flocktimus Maximus this week, DCH.
Holy smokes. The DCH has done a lot for this show, and he's been with us forever, and the idea that, that's just a lot of scratch to throw down, and just thanks, man. Like I'm stunned. Like, I can't believe that it feels that worth it to him. And if it does, man, you obviously are amazing. Thank you, Doug.
It's very amazing, and it's going to be a big help to the show. And incredibly appreciative that you find that much value in the show that you, in return, would do that for us.
Yeah. So big shout out, no doubt.
Big shout out to Doug, and welcome to the flock to a couple new members. We got Alex Whitby is in for the our Pick'em League, and as well as stickers. Says,
awesome.
Hey guys, I've been listening to the show for around 6 months now, and I absolutely love it. It's the perfect listening material for those long drives in the car. I've just become a member of the flock, and it feels great. I haven't been a Seahawks fan for long, only about a year, and I'm gutted that I wasn't a fan on February 2nd, 2014. I watched the game thinking to myself, this team is catfish awesome, not knowing that soon I would have such a huge following for them. I met my girlfriend in September of 2014, and that Christmas, I got a present from her family from over in America, and you guessed it, they are from Seattle. They got me a Seahawks t-shirt, and from that day, my love for the Seahawks has grown and grown. I've got the jerseys, hats, t-shirts, cups, and even a flag for my car. I even managed to find a 2005 genuine leather Seahawks NFL jacket. Even though it's too big for me, 25 pounds off of eBay was a steal.
Awesome, man.
I'm going to all 4 London games this year, and I can't wait to go fully knitted out to show my support. It's also 53 days until my girlfriend and our son come to Seattle. We are spending 16 days staying with their family in Auburn. I'm so excited to finally come to the Holy Land and see CenturyLink Field. Keep up the good work. Your shows are great. Alex from Chesham, UK.
Dude, Alex, thank you so much for becoming a member of the flock, and I really hope that you enjoy your pilgrimage back to the Mecca, back in Seattle. That's going to be an amazing experience. And look, man, it would have been cool to be like an official fan when they were winning the Super Bowl, no doubt, because I'm not going to lie, it was really cool when that happened, but you can't choose when you fall in love, Brandon.
No.
Hey, it happens when it happens. But once Alex did fall in love, it was all in, man.
He's all in, for sure.
It was all in, down to the cups, oversized coats, all of it, man. Yeah, he's 12 through and through. So thank you so much, Alex. Thanks for the email. And go Hawks, buddy.
Go Hawks. Welcome to the flock. Also, welcome to the flock to Dave Ravel. He's in for some stickers. He gave us a $2 pledge per month. And so welcome to the flock to Dave.
Big time. Welcome, Dave.
Also wanted to thank at Jay Green, Green with 2 E's and an E on the end, Jay Green _34 on Twitter. He was the first to post under Michael Bennett's response to the Seth Wickersham article. And I'm pretty sure we picked up about 20 new followers on Twitter because of Jay Green 34.
All right. Thanks, man.
So
way to be Johnny on the Twitter.
He just said, ESPN is trash, and that's why I get all my news from Seahawkers podcast.
Oh, hell yeah, buddy. Thanks, man. Yeah, if anybody else wants to, help us with the free publicity thing, that'd be great. It seems to work to get to where you want to go.
The value for value thing doesn't have to work just with money.
Monetarily. Yeah. Help. You can hook a brother up a lot of other ways, man.
Tell people about the show.
Yeah. So thank you very much for that at whatever the Twitter. I don't do Twitter handles.
Green _34.
All right. Awesome. Thanks, man.
Green with 2 E's and an E on the end. So I guess 3 E's total.
All the E's, huh?
All the E's.
That's a lot of E's for a green.
All right. Let's get into some email, Adam.
Wonderful. I'm looking forward to it. What do the peeps got this week?
First one here from Taylor in Blacksburg, Virginia. She says, hi, I've been listening for a couple seasons now, and I'm a supporter on Patreon. And I had fun this last season playing in all 3 Pick'em leagues. This is my first time writing to you all. I am the football fan in my house. My husband knows basically little about the game, so I have to explain a lot to him. Mm-hmm. Listening to this podcast has really helped with this as well, since I'm a more recent NFL/Seahawks fan. I've been a lifelong Hokie, a Virginia Tech football fan. Okay. as I've grown up in the same town as Virginia Tech and went there for school, and now I work there. However, I wanted to get into playing fantasy football with my family since they seem to have so much fun with it. And I thought if I had an NFL team I could cheer for during the season, it would be more fun to also play fantasy football. For many random reasons. One being Cam Chancellor is a fellow Hokie. The team I chose ended up being the Seahawks. Thank goodness. The more I paid attention to the team, the more I fell in love with the whole franchise. Moreover, we ended up going to the Super Bowl that same year I became a fan. You're welcome. My husband and I traveled to Seattle to attend a game a couple of seasons ago, and I saw the Seahawks beat the Bears 26-0.
Ooh, yeah.
We just booked tickets to see the Seahawks at the Titans a little closer this year, and we're hoping to get back to Seattle for New Year's and see them at the Clink again playing the Cardinals. Thanks for all you do. Go Hokies. Go Hawks. From Taylor.
All right, Taylor. Hey, thanks for the email all the way from Virginia. That's pretty cool. And look, I love the idea that new people are finding the team and becoming fans of football as quickly as they are. It seems like, and I mean, this isn't just the Seahawks. This is the NFL overall, right? And it's pretty neat to watch the game grow that way. And you're a good spouse, Taylor. You're a good spouse. Bringing the husband along slowly, upping his football knowledge. Doing what you can. That's just being a good football spouse. And being the only football fan really in the household is hard, girl. I know it's hard. So keep it up. I'm proud of you.
And not shocking that you would pick, like the best looking dude on the team to essentially generate your fandom.
Well, and I mean, Cam Chancellor was a Virginia Tech Hokie.
Sure.
So I get it. Yeah. I mean, if you live in Blacksburg, I mean, I get it. And he's good looking.
It helps. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, him and who's probably the best looking dude on the Seahawks if you had to judge right now? Just guess, Brandan.
Cam Chancellor.
Or just
easy.
You think it's Cam?
Easy.
I think it's P. Rich.
Really?
I think it's Paul Richardson.
Yeah. He's kind of scrawny though.
Dude, he's not scrawny. Cam Chancellor's just an orc. It's not fair. You're comparing him to another species that came to us from another planet somewhere or something.
See, now that you bring up Paul Richardson's name, now I'm going to have to look because I just can't really picture him. He's not a dude that stands out to me as like one of the good-looking dudes on the team.
Whatever. Ross Wildering will totally back me up on this one because I know his crush on P. Rich couldn't be higher than anybody else's.
Oh, yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
He's a handsome man.
Yeah.
I mean, neither of them are a Cooper Helfet, but...
right, but we don't have Helfet's not on the team anymore.
Right, exactly. So he lost his title.
We need more of the ladies in the Ring of Honor, Adam, because this last week, it's probably about a 5-to-1 ratio, which is okay. I'm proud of that ratio, but it could be better. Yeah. We had a fun conversation this last week about man buns, and I know Becca was looking for some help, and I had to make sure to get the ladies involved on the Ring of Honor page. But whether it's fashion or football, we can have good conversations about just about anything on that page.
Yeah, the bat signal went out from Ella to all of the fellow female 12s to back her up on man buns. Or was it Ella or was it Rebecca?
It was Becca.
It was Becca. Yeah. Sorry. So Becca Ella was like, no, I'm out on the man buns. That's right. but Becca was like, yeah, like man buns, they look great. And look, all I know, Becca, like I love you, girl. I do. But I mean, at the end of the day, you may rethink. Like the only taste you might have is in your mouth at that point. Like because it's a bad look. It's a bad look, and you can't have it. You can't have the man buns. You can't have skinny jeans. You can't have any of that. Like it's just no.
Well, Montana style versus Southern California style, two very different things.
And I hope it always and forever remains that way.
Next email here from Eric from Anchorage says, hey guys, so I know you say don't click on any of these bogus fake Seahawks stories on Bleacher Report.
I know, man, but you can't. It's hard not to. I feel you.
But these heartless bastards create the most intriguing headlines to get you to click. I must admit, sadly, I have been clickbaited. We all have, Eric. That's why we talk about it.
Yeah, we're not above it by any stretch of the imagination. We might be the worst perpetrators out of everybody listening.
That brings me to another point, that with all these stories about resentment in the locker room, it's hard not to think about Super Bowl 49. Do you guys think that Super Bowl was the root cause of Marshawn Lynch retiring? How do you guys learn to accept the fact that we can't go back in time to the Super Bowl? He says, P.S. I also hate AC/DC, so you're not alone, Adam.
well, thanks for the backup, man. Look, he seems to think that I have let go of the idea that we can travel back in time and try to fix a wrong there. I'm still working on it, because that's the beauty of time travel. If I ever do figure it out, it doesn't matter how long from now I figure it out, because I can go back to that point at any given point and get it fixed. So I still haven't given up hope on that. I think that's in the realm of possibility.
I still watch the end of those games thinking, I go back and I watch Super Bowl 40, and I think that, okay, they're not going to call pass interference on Darrell Jackson this time. They're not. There's no way they can call it on him. They can't call that penalty on Matt Hasselbeck after trying to tackle a dude.
Yeah, I fully expect a different outcome every time. Every time I see the game retold or play it or watch it played again, But so that's tough. These articles are tough to read, and no, I don't think that the loss in Super Bowl 49 really played into Marshawn Lynch's retirement thinking.
I think that injury, his final season with the Seahawks, the abdominal injury.
Exactly. Yeah. I think it was the way that his body felt. Now, again, you're asking me to go inside the mind of Marshawn Lynch and tell you what he was thinking. That's a tough, tall task. I'm not sure that I'm up to that.
Yeah, I think that might be another thing that's best to give up on, as well as maybe not time travel. Maybe don't give up on that.
No, I have a strong feeling that I will come up with a feasible way to time travel before I can give you an accurate representation of what's going on inside of Marshawn Lynch's head.
They need to do a sequel to the movie Being John Malkovich and Being Marshawn Lynch.
That would be fantastic.
I know.
We need a John Malkovich cameo in that too.
Well,
yeah.
He's probably the one that makes it happen. It makes the ability to go inside of Lynch's mind.
That's exactly it. Why are we giving away the script idea? There's somebody in Hollywood right now being like,
we want a co-writing credit, and we want a cameo in the movie. That's all we ask.
That's it. Yeah, that's fair. We're not even asking for cheese on this one,
Right.
So yeah,
we're holding back on the really good ideas.
Exactly.
Next email from Danny in Thailand.
Right on. I was hoping we'd hear from Danny on this.
Me too. It says, hey guys, how are you doing? I've been so busy here that I haven't caught up with you guys in a long time, until you guys mentioned about the latest Thai King and Adams Do Better. So, you guys miss me? Haha.
Yeah, I do, man. On the inside.
Let's be honest here. All of the stuff you said was right. We were blocked from Catfish Facebook here, but luckily I always travel abroad. I will check it out later. After I move my ass from Thailand, or the Secret Service in Thailand will come and kick my ass and wipe me out of my place.
Yeah, don't do that, man. We don't need that.
By the way, let's talk about football. I really like this rookie class, especially Malik McDowell. I'm a big college fan as well. I think many experts were right. How the hell a 290-pound guy played nose tackle and matched with bigger dudes on the offensive line every game for a whole season? Dude, that's a suicide mission. With Pete Carroll's coaching, I believe he will be a difference maker. I'll be looking for the sacks coming from the inside this season, baby. Can't wait. Nice to catch up with you guys again. As always, go Hawks.
Thank you so much, Danny, for corroborating the story that I gave you guys with the Do Better last week. One thing I didn't think about, Brandon, was the idea that I'm not sure either of us can ever go to Thailand now.
Oh, like we're on the watch list?
I'm sure if the King's Goons found out about the pod, man, like that, I'm sure we're persona non grata there at this point. There's no doubt about that.
Well, maybe we can go to Vietnam, and that way it's a shorter trip for Danny to come hang out with us.
There we go. All right, that works there.
Yeah.
So, as far as Malik McDowell is concerned, I am excited about his potential, and we have seen that the Seahawks are great at getting the best out of defensive linemen and defensive backs. And you're 100% right about him being misplayed throughout his last season as a college player. And combine that with the ankle injury that he mentioned, and yeah, man, it is a suicide mission. So I think that the appropriate expectations that the expectations that you're having are appropriate. Like he could be a big cog.
So thanks to Danny for the email. I want to do better and better at life.
All right, man. Why don't you load us up on Do Better?
All right, my Do Better this week. I had a hard time of whether or not we'd be able to ignore this, Adam. A lot of our listeners know that you and I are from Montana.
Yep.
Montana in the news this last week because we had a special election. You know, Ryan Zinke, our former congressman, was selected as the Department of the Interior to lead the Department of the Interior. So we had to have a special election here in Montana to elect our new congressman.
Because we only have one.
We only have one. We're one of the few states that's all we get.
That's it. Yeah. We used to have two. When I was a kid, we had two.
Oh, yeah.
And then we slipped below 1 million people for the entire state, and they yoinked one.
Yeah.
Like on a census year. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Stupid census. So we're going to get into some local politics that made some national news. A reporter was reportedly body slammed. Then those were his words. But my biggest problem with this entire story is maybe not my biggest problem, but this is an accuracy issue right here.
Okay.
The fact that he was body slammed when what clearly was described by the reports that came out, what I read on foxnews.com, was not a body slam. When you grab somebody by the neck and then slam them down, that is a choke slam.
Is a choke slam a real phrase?
Well, in WWE it is.
Oh, I had no idea.
I know my wrestling moves. Now, it's been a little while. I watched a lot of wrestling when I was a kid, when it was still called WWF. And to me, what was described was a choke slam. So for all of the reports out there calling this a body slam, get your facts straight. Do better.
Do better for sure, man. Yeah, the reporter, I imagine... Because in the audio tape, right, he says, "You just body slammed me." I'm pretty sure he wasn't
not in the frame of mind for getting just the right words.
Right. And I think I saw a video of it. I'm not sure if it was legit or not, but it was from C-SPAN. And it didn't catch it from the beginning. And it looked like more he was trying to, I mean, I'm not an MMA guy, so I don't know exactly, but it looked more like a mount kind of, like he was kind of on top of him. I don't know. There could be a few things that could be at play there. The whole thing just kind of crazy town. But anyways, talking about crazy town, man,
you got to do better.
I got to do better this week, and this was interesting. So my do better this week is for the Native American gentleman who stole a 2016 white Dodge pickup from the Eastgate Albertsons parking lot on Wednesday night. I had gone to a concert for my daughter, and on my way home, I was driving by the Eastgate Albertsons, and out of the parking lot comes this white Dodge Ram pickup, just whoop, whoop, just comes flying out of the parking lot, out into traffic. And here's this dude running behind him in softball outfit with his arms just flailing like a windmill, like trying to catch the tailgate, just screaming, "You gotta stop, stop." And at first I'm thinking, man, this guy's just getting screwed with by his buddies or something, that's like leave him in the parking lot. And as I got closer to the guy and the truck passed me the opposite direction, I could see his face and it was sheer terror. So I stop, whip a Yui, and I roll down my window right quick. It's like, dude, what happened? My truck just got stolen, man. I was like, your truck just got stolen? Yeah. It's like, all right, man, get in. He's like, why? I said, get the catfish in. Get in. So he gets in, and it's right by an interstate on-ramp. And so I decide that there's one of four ways he could have gone. I decided he was going to be heading east on I-90. So I hit the on-ramp, I floor the Jeep, dropping gears, just whoop, hauling butt. Get up the on-ramp, just get about to the East Missoula exit, which is maybe just 3 miles down the road. I'm like, call 911, man. We got to get the cops out here. So he gets on the phone, and his head is just swimming. He can't even describe what his truck looks like. We're flying down the interstate. I'm telling him what to say to the dispatch. I'm like, we're on I-90. We're going this fast. We're about this mile marker. And we get up behind him. And he's cruising about 80. I'm not sure that he knew that we were following him at that point. And we start going, and we go maybe about another 7-8 miles to the to the Bonner exit, which is the next one down. And he still doesn't seem to catch on. He continues on down the highway. And at that point, he starts to accelerate and start making some moves. I think it was just kind of to see if we were going to follow or not. And we get to the next exit, the tour exit. And dude, just careens off into the off ramp last second. I do the same. The second he sees me do it, whoop, he hits it. Goes flying down the off ramp, blows through the intersection, back up onto the on ramp, up onto the interstate. So I do the same thing. Hit second, whoop, just floor it. We start flying through the intersection, hit the on-ramp. By that time, he was maybe about 6-7 car lengths ahead of us. And we're flying down the interstate at this point. The Jeep speedometer goes to 100. I had it buried far past that. We're easy doing about $120, something like that, like flying behind this guy. And he's starting to pull away at this point because a 97 Jeep Cherokee isn't keeping up with the 2016 Dodge Ram pickup at, the max speeds. And so he's starting to outpace us a little bit, but I can still keep visual contact with him, right? Whole time, we're now about 30 miles down the road. Still haven't seen a catfish cop yet. I don't know where the hell they were.
Yeah.
The dispatcher asks, how fast you guys going? I'm like, he's like, we're doing a little over 100 now. And she's like, I'm ordering you to stop. You stop right now. And I was like, the catfish stopping? There's no way we're stopping right now. We'll lose visual sight of him and you'll never find him. And so she starts freaking out and it starts, telling us that we're going to go to jail and crap if we don't slow down. Finally, the dude looks at me. He's like, we got to slow down. I was like, all right, man, fine. So we slow down. We lose sight of him just before the Clinton exit. By about that time, Highway Patrol or the sheriff's office comes ripping by and on the phone with the cops and everything. And this has a bit of an anticlimactic ending. They did not find him.
Oh,
they lost him.
They lost him at that point.
I'm
a little bit disappointed in you in your following skills. The fact that you allowed him to catch on, the fact that you were tailing him.
Well, I stayed a car behind him for the most part.
Yeah.
But he saw me run up real quick because that was the thing. The thing that was difficult was when we first hit the interstate, we didn't know which way it was going. So I was hauling ass.
Right.
And by the time I saw a white pickup up in front, I'm asking the dude, I'm like, is that your truck? And he's like, I don't know. I don't know. And he was totally out of it. So I had to catch it quick and kind of see if that was his truck or not.
Oh.
And even when I got close, he was like, yeah, man, I don't know. I was like, that's your truck, man. I saw it pull out. So it was at that point, I think he had an inkling. And then he was like, all right, I'm gonna see. So at that point, I took the fellow back to his to the police station. The biggest bummer for him was he had an engagement ring in the truck. He was about to give his lady friend.
Oh,
and
man.
Not only that, but it was the stones from his mother's wedding ring that were in that ring. So that was a bummer. But on my way home, I could feel there was a little popping noise in the clutch at that point. The next day, I went down to Darby, which is south of Hamilton, by about an hour and a half. And pulling a trailer back, the clutch exploded, and I was stuck in Hamilton for 2 days. So that's why the show's a little late getting out, because I decided to play freaking Dukes of Hazzard, a Native American guy who hops into running pickups and steals them with the engagement rings in them. Do better.
Yeah, big do better.
But look, I'm not gonna lie, it was kind of fun.
You got to live out part of like a movie, yeah.
Yeah, I got to be part of a high speed pursuit. Boy, I had that poor Jeep pegged out too, man.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
that was about all she wrote.
Yeah, like I said, I'm still disappointed that you weren't better able to.
It's the first time I've pursued somebody, man.
Well,
Cut
now
me
you'll
a break.
know. Now you have experience for next time.
I kept with them for 30 miles. Like, where's everybody else?
Well, on to Better at Life. Better at Life this week. I think we're going to do Better at Life because having a former Seahawks Hall of Famer pass away, it's not something that we've had happen since we've done the show. And I wish, Adam, that I could have compiled just all of the stories that I've heard on the radio this past week, online, in the newspapers. There was just so much in terms of the good stories about Cortez Kennedy. And so for Better at Life this week, let's close it out with an excerpt from Cortez Kennedy's 2012 Hall of Fame induction speech.
I can't think of a better man to be nominated for Better at Life than Skip Bayless this week. Like we said earlier, great player, great human being, and he'll be missed, man.
Cortez Kennedy, Better at Life than Skip Bayless.
Cortez Kennedy.
I'll tell you what, that year I made the Pro Bowl. I went in as an alternate. I called my buddy Jerome Brown. Said, Jerome, I made the Pro Bowl. And Jerome said, Cortez, you didn't earn it. I said, didn't earn it? What you mean? So the next week, we go to the Pro Bowl. Jerome said, Tez, come here. He said, I'm going to tell you something. The reason I said you didn't earn it, because you need to get voted as a starter or make the Pro Bowl. Don't back yourself in. I said, thank you, Jerome. I said, I got the point. That summer, we ended up losing Jerome Brown. He died in a car wreck with his nephew Gus. I ended up changing my number from 96 to 99 to honor Jerome. We only won 2 games that year, like Chris Berman said, 14 losses. I ended up being a player of the year. That was a tough year. Coach Flores can contest to that. I felt so bad for Coach Flores being a head coach because we didn't have 0 offense. Defense was top 10 in the country. That's bad when you go to the game when the defensive coordinator said, guys, we're not going to win the game. Let's don't embarrass ourselves. You know we in for a long year then. I'd like to thank Jacob Green and Joe Nash. Jacob, thank you for helping me get involved with the community. You're one of the reasons I started my football clinic in Arkansas. Joe Nash, thank you for helping me with my technique. And I'd like to thank my rookie club. My class that came in 1990 with me. Robert Blackman, Terry Wooden, and Chris Warren. I love you guys.